1/3 of the membership shall constitute a quorum at the annual and regular meetings of the club. So that's
25, I believe, right now, because I think we're 75 members.
right. So as long as we get 25 people there, we'll be good shape. We're getting about that many, so we should be all right.
Yeah, we've got
33 today, for
33
example.
right now,
So
yeah.
this would constitute a quorum.
All right. So I guess I will call this to order. Is Josh McKinney on the call? He is scheduled to be to give the invocation today.
If not, I'm always ready to give the invocation.
I don't see Josh on there, Dr. Leach, so I would defer to you and would love for you to give the invocation.
Okay, let us pray. Let us take a moment to remember all the religions represented in the Rotary family throughout the world. Let us also recall that when we were invited to join our Rotary clubs, we were not asked, are you a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Jew, a Buddhist, or a Sikh? We were not asked because all religions are welcome in the Rotary family. Please join me in a moment of reflection and thanks. With our friends beside us and no person beneath us, with the bonds of Rotary between us and our worries behind us, with our goals before us and no task beyond us, with a thirst for knowledge and a dream of a polio-free world, we are thankful for our Rotary friends and the time we are about to share. Thank you. Shalom. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah. Very nice.
That's great. Okay, next we have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will bring up the flag here. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic,
and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God,
liberty,
Individual justice
justice for all.
for all.
All right. So in terms of announcements, remember we've sent out a couple times the information about Cops for Tots. To make a contribution, Jim Benton and the police department requested that you send it directly to the police department. The address was in the email from last week. I believe it was the updates email from last week. And just note on your memo line, Rotary Club of Lake Hickory. You can also make a contribution rather in memory of Doug Taylor. If you do that, just note on the memo line, Rotary Club of Lake Hickory in memory of Doug Taylor. And we're also, I know Ernie is still looking for contributions to Polio Plus.
Can I give a quick report?
In minutes.
Yes, sir.
All right, to date, we have raised $1,192 from 20 club members. And today is actually supposed to be the last day of it, but I sent President Loehr an email and asked him if we could carry it over one more week, so that good folks who haven't, have forgotten to send in their money would do so. And so we're going to carry it over one more week, next week.
Take this to Ken.
And David, if you would send out my little reminder about address and all that stuff, if you can, I would appreciate it.
Sure. I will be happy to do that. I'll send that out this evening.
All right.
I'll send out one more reminder on probably post that schedule for Salvation Army on Saturday, and then the Polio Plus and the Cops for Tots as well.
Good deal. Thank you.
Then let's see. So today is the day that we announce to the members the proposed officer lineups for the year beginning July 1, 2021. We talked about it. I sent it out in today's meeting notice. Nominations can also be submitted to the general membership and should be submitted prior to December 29th. Let me just go through those. So the next year we will have, I'm going to be serving as president beginning July 1. Then Ingrid will be president-elect. Second vice president, the proposal is Nat Outen. Then treasurer, Duran Swernigan. And then secretary, Alan Barnhart. And then our 2 open board seats, Ernie Sills and Lindsay Kiesler, have both agreed to be reappointed to additional 3-year terms. Did I miss anything, John, on that?
Yeah.
Thanks. Does anybody else have any other announcements? All right. Well, without further ado, I am going to hand things over to our past president, Bill Loehr, and give us a virtual tour of the Rotary International Headquarters. Apparently, a special.
Sounds like a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to go close the door. Just 1 second.
All right. I'm going to get your PowerPoint pulled up here.
I think Dakota's bringing the presentation to us.
I want you to know he was silent now for quite a while. A little bit of history. Beginning in 1980, I was an affiliate of the American College of Healthcare Executives. And so I visited Chicago many times and never found out where Evanston, Illinois is relative to Chicago, and never visited Rotary International Headquarters. Although I knew that my relative Augustus Loehr, he's my great uncle, is a kind of a figure within the history of Rotary. So in September of 2008, I did not know that it was going to be my last visit to Chicago until last year when we went with the Caparosi's. But nevertheless, in the fall of 2008, I went to a seminar, a fundraising seminar in Chicago. And this was a shot I took, obviously, of downtown coming in to O'Hare. We can go on to the next slide, Dave. And while I was at the hotel, I asked, how long would it take to get from here, downtown Chicago, to Evanston? And they said, oh, it's about a 35 minute cab ride. And it ended up costing about $20. And I had envisioned we were going to see something along the lines of Oz. I had in my mind an edifice that would just be incredible. And this was the most striking feature of an 11-story building, was the entrance. And about half of the building is occupied by other tenants who provide revenue for the Rotary International Headquarters to sustain itself in this location. And I know Dave sent out to you last week in preparation for this little tour, information about how this building came to be here and all the places that it had been, the office, before this was constructed. But nevertheless, I took an afternoon that was free from the seminar, and I took a cab and I went to Rotary International Headquarters, and I had arranged to be toured around the building, and we can go on. Next slide, Dave. Within the Rotary International Headquarters, my great uncle's office was preserved by the Rotary Club of Chicago, because the original meeting, 4 gentlemen, Sylvester Scheil, Hiram Shorey, Paul Harris, and Gustavus Loehr, met on Thursday, February 23rd, 1905. And this is not the exact location, because the Unity building on Dearborn Street was torn down, but the Chicago Rotary has recreated. This was the reception area. Next slide. This was the reception area and the plaque that recognized the people in what's called the Paul Harris 7-Eleven Club, who helped to keep this office in perpetuity. Next slide. And this is a register that I filled out after I took a photograph of it, but just on those 2 pages, this reminded me so much of going to a Rotary International Convention. These people who signed it were from California, Greece, Finland, Japan, Chile, Thailand, South Africa, Colombia, Bangladesh, and New Jersey. And it's just another example of how international we are. And you see up above the pen, the brown brochures. I don't know if you all can see me or not, but obviously, you know, you get a pin from Rotary for everything, room 711 pin, and a key. When you join the 711 Club, and a keepsake of the first Rotary meeting. Next slide. This was the place where folks hang their hats. Next slide.
I'm getting ready to go eat lunch.
And I think we entered Gus's office with the next slide. Yep. Next slide again. And this was special to me. I just, knowing that I'm related, it was pretty cool. You can see the calendar, February 23rd, which was a Thursday. Next slide. You can see mining instruments, I guess an old calculator, his pipe. Next slide. And this was the original furniture that was in the Dearborn office that they just stored until they could finally recreate it. Next slide. Just a close-up again of the calendar and at the old telephone. Next slide. And the green is exactly the color that the office was in 1905. Next slide. And that's the table and the 4 chairs that the gentleman sat at. And the windows, those are not, because it's in the Chicago RI headquarters. That's the view that you had from the Dearborn office in 1905. Next. Next. That's again just showing you the view, and I guess I don't know what the kind of machine that is next to the radiators, but very old. Next. Also, they took on my tour, they took me to the president's office. This is D.K. Lee, Don Kern Lee's office. He had just taken office July the 1st, and this was the end of September. But it was beautiful. And that's, of course, a Korean flag over in the corner. Next slide. And this is where the Rotary International Board meets 4 times a year. Well, they meet there 3 times a year, October, January, and April. And then they always meet during the International Convention. But I thought this was a strikingly beautiful room. Next slide.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
This is Julie Packer. Can you go back 2 slides and point out which one was your uncle? Because I used that picture in orientation, but I don't have it with me every single orientation that I've done. And well,
my kids make fun of the Loehr nose, but nevertheless, starting on the left in that photograph is Sylvester Scheil. Next, Paul Harris is next. Hiram Shorey, and then Augustus or Gus Loehr is the guy on the far right with the, my kids call it a schnozzle, but that's him on the far right.
The first guy, his name's Scheil. How did he spell his last name?
S-C-H-I-E-L-E.
Okay, all right, because I have a friend with that last name.
Bill, I think that device is a dictograph device.
Huh, okay.
They used to use old cylinders, wax cylinders, to dictate information to it, and then they could give it to their secretary and she'd listen to it and transcribe it.
And I'll bet those circular things underneath is what held the cylinders.
Yeah, the cylinders, which are just underneath the recording device there.
Thank you, Alan.
Uh-huh.
Hey, Bill, do you know the coloring scheme? Is that circa the era, the time?
That was exactly the color. What's interesting, I'm on a bunch of RI sites, and somebody included a photograph of Gus's office taken this year, and they have repainted with a very soothing off-white, not a tan, lighter than that, but it no longer is garish. And I walked in and I was like, oh my gosh. But that's how it was. Dave, you can take us forward if you would. We are almost done, folks. It's an 11-story building, but most of it is not Rotary, and most of it is just ho-hum offices. But that's where the board does meet 3 times a year. And the next slide, I never thought of this until I visited that. That's that booth back there with the Rotary International emblem on it is where interpreters sit to translate what's being said into all the different languages of the board. And then there are trustees that meet in January of each year from the foundation. So the board members and the trustees meet once a year in that very room. But it's very impressive. I couldn't begin to show you how large that room is, but it probably holds 60 to, I would say 60 to 80 people. Next. In my trap, this was amazing to me because I kind of view myself as just a Rotarian. But when I was walking around on my building tour, this gentleman stopped and insisted I have my picture taken with him. And he's a past Rotary International president, Charles Keller. And once he was out of earshot, the person that was taking me on the tour said, "You would not believe he comes around here almost every day." Unfortunately, he passed away in 2008, but I was just absolutely stunned that he would shake my hand. I love meeting Rotary dignitaries. Next. They also recreated Paul Harris's office. And as large as Gus's was, Paul's office, this almost encompassed the whole room. So it wasn't, except the things on the wall were very, very remarkable, but the office itself was very small and humble. Next. Outside, they fly the Rotary International flag, the American flag, and then the flag of the sitting president. So once again, that's the South Korean flag on the far right. Next. Ernie, this is for you, these next 3 slides. They have a plaque that tells the public, anybody who is wandering by and sees this, the history of Polio Plus. And I'll pause for a minute so you can read it. But next to this plaque was a beautiful statue. And I took 2 pictures of it because it really hit home. Next. And then one more. It is just an overwhelmingly beautiful statue. Next. When I talked to the staff person, I told them that I had come up by cab and spent $20. And the lady shook her head and she said, "I don't know why you did that." She said, "You can take the red train and it will take you back to downtown Chicago and it will cost you $3. So I did that. And I added this photograph because I'll tell you why I did that in just a minute. But if you look, not at the circular modern building, but the building just to the right of it, that's across the Chicago River, that's the Wrigley building. And it is absolutely beautiful. And then right above the right side of the bridge is the Chicago Tribune. And I had told Paul and Lila Caprosi about this last year before we visited, because as you wander around the Chicago Tribune building, they have pieces of rock from all around the world, and including a piece of rock from the moon, but they have from the pyramids, from the Alamo, from all over the world. Unfortunately, it was being refurbished and it was blocked off. We couldn't see it during our trip last year, but when you go to Chicago, you need to see it. Now, the mistake I made when I took that red $3 train is as it entered Chicago, it went underground. And I didn't have a clue where my hotel was relative to all these things that are speeding by and all these exits. So I actually got out about 1.5 miles from where my hotel was. So I had a good hike to get back to it. Next slide. But a view of downtown and what used to be the Sears Tower, that's the big, massive building with the 2 white spires. It's now called the Willis Tower. But I did what every Chicagoan or every visitor to the Sears Tower / Willis Tower does. Next slide. And that's it with the crossbucks. It is just a spectacular, from anywhere in the city, you see this building. Next slide. They have a sky deck, and that's my feet, 1,353 feet above the ground, looking out over 4 states, 110 stories up. Next slide. Now, Jeff Mackey must not be at this meeting because he knows I don't get up on a ladder. That is not my feat. You notice to the right of the photograph advertising the sky deck, the lady walking by with a backpack. That's the closest I will ever get to the sky deck, period. Acrophobia big time. But I think that's the last slide it is. So questions, folks, if there are any.
Tell me again, Bill, when you went there?
September of 2008.
Bill,
that was my last visit until last year with Paul and Lila. But Chicago is a great place.
Bill, that was really interesting.
Times.
What was the profession of Harris?
He's an attorney.
An attorney.
Paul Harris was an attorney.
That's what I thought.
When he moved to Chicago, he was so lonely. He thought, invite some friends, get together, and under the rubric of service, get to know one another, make friends, and rotate a meeting place, which is loosely how we became Rotary.
John King, what were the professions of the other 2 men? What were the professions of the other 2 men who formed the original group?
Hiram Story was a jeweler, and Sylvester Scheil was also into mining and coal, as was my great uncle.
What was the commonality of those 4 individuals that they knew each other as a group?
They were good acquaintances of Paul Harris. And I gave to Lou a Rotary book, or I would wave my copy, but it's in another room here. There was an author, real briefly, who had presented a history of Rotary, which I bought a copy of and went up to get him to sign my book. And he had told us during his presentation that of the 4 people who were at the first meeting, 2, of course, one of them is being Paul Harris, but if I remember correctly, Sylvester Scheil, it was the other, stayed in Rotary and were the driving force to expand it. And the other 2, Gus in particular, ran into financial hardships and had to withdraw from Rotary within the first year and died poor about 4 years after, about 1911, something like, if I remember correctly. So I had walked up and put my hand over my badge and had him sign the book. And I said, tell me the two who didn't last with Rotary. And unfortunately, Gus was one of them. I took my hand away and I said, well, I had to ask that question and get some clarity. But nevertheless, the first meeting was at his office and I just had to see it. So I hope you enjoyed your little trip to Chicago. And if you ever go, go to Gino's East Pizza. It's right by the water tower for probably some of the best Chicago pizza in the world. Highly recommend it.
Bill?
Yes.
Bill, about how many staff members are there in the world headquarters today? Do you know?
It's over 100, I believe, but most of them right now are working from home. All the dealings that I have with them from time to time, especially with the foundation, everybody's working from home. Because they've really been hard hit in Chicago.
Thank you, Bill. That was great. Does anybody else final questions for Mr. Loehr?
Bill? Well, thanks y'all for putting up with that. I talked about it for so many years and hinted about it. And when it became my turn to have a program, this was fun for me.
Thank you, Bill. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Very nice.
All right.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
I always highlight you in every orientation at the beginning.
And people still join.
Nice.
I don't know if this showed up or not, but this is what you get if you join that 7-Eleven club first meeting, and then we've got a pin for everything. So that's it. Okay. Thanks.
So next week, our meeting is at our regular virtual location, and Nancy Meek will be delivering the invitation. And the program will be from Eddie Wetmore, Blue's son, and the title is Will Aquaponics Cure World Hunger?
Wow.
With that, I guess unless there's anybody have any final announcements.
Look in your pocketbook one more time for polio.
All right, and I'll send that out to y'all this evening so that everybody has that information one last time. You can drop it off to Ernie. With that,
Dave, thanks for your help.
You are quite welcome.
You and John Leach.
Yeah, John was great. He put everything into a PowerPoint for us. We got it figured out. With that, we can adjourn with the four-way test. Of the things we think,
say, do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Or build goodwill and better friendship? Or be beneficial to all concerned? Be safe.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good week.
Take care.
Have a great week.
Bye.